Welcome to It's a Sublime Life. Inspiration on living an excellent life and seeing the beauty already in life. You can find It's a Sublime Life on most social media platforms. Just search for It's a Sublime Life. Welcome to It's a Sublime Life. On today's episode, we have Kat Williams. She's the founder of Stay Calm and Content, which is her company. She's a relationship counsellor, coach, writer, and speaker. She's done a TedX talk on emotional resilience. She's the author of Stay Calm and Content, no matter what life throws at you. She's a relate counsellor. She's been on BBC Radio, ITV This Morning, and Chat TV, which is a Canadian. And today in the podcast, we're going to be talking about a little bit about emotional resilience and relationships. You do work with individuals. I can see you don't work presenting at schools, and you do webinars as well. And you work with individuals, you work with couples over Skype on and face-to-face as well. So let's see if we can start with this. I like this. You can expect this from you. A welcoming and safe place to be yourself without judgmental questions. That sounds lovely. And we're able to handle relationships even with people you don't like.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's the hardest one.
And you deal with so many issues, actually, not just emotional resilience and relationships, which we're going to be sort of focused on today. You deal with work issues, confusion, anxiety, depression, bereavement, low self-esteem, parenting, lots of things that you cover. I like this testimonial. It says, I feel completely different after only 2 sessions with Kat. That's good. If people today, that brings up any issues for people today, you can talk to Kat for 10 minutes or contact her on her website to see if she can help you further. Let's see. Oh, your book. I like your book. Stay Calm and Content, no matter what life throws at you. Lots of 5-star reviews on Amazon. The forward carry on. Stay Calm and Content contains enough fresh wisdom to ensure that most readers will come away with valuable new ideas to apply to your own life. That's good. Mm-hmm. And I like this part as well. Personal short stories highlight how you can control or change how you feel about yourself and how you can positively influence your life and the lives of everyone around you. And it says it's not like a typical self-help book where you need a problem first. You can kind of this and sort of be better. Yeah, better at things. Oh, yes. And people who find a way to stay calm and content no matter what life throws at them all have similar thoughts, behaviours and attributes which can be learned by anyone. Did you have fun writing this book? How did you decide to write a book on what topic, and what brought you into this field that you were in at the moment?
Yeah, so I suppose that's my story, really. It's really interesting as to where the book came from and what's happened since. And it's about 7 years ago now that it came out. So the truth is that, as the readers may not know, but the Stay Calm and Content cover of the book is white and red, which looks similar to the Keep Calm and Carry On poster. So that's where the story began. I was looking at that poster before it became sort of tea towels and mugs and was almost everywhere. As I say, this is sort of a while ago, would be about 10 years ago maybe. I happened to have picked it up somewhere and I put it on my kitchen wall. And we're a military family, so at that point we'd already been posted to lots of different places, at home and abroad. But at that point we were up in the Highlands of Inverness. And my husband was on the front line in Afghanistan with the Black Watch. and my children were 2 and 4 or 5. And so the poster on my wall that I was looking at, I was not calm. I was, keep calm and carry on. Was going, I really still, even though I'd been a counsellor for quite a while at that point, even though my mum has been a counsellor since I was a child, relationship counsellor. So I sort of felt like I must have some of the tools to cope with whatever life throws at you, and that somehow I'd be okay. But it really, I just had that experience that I think all of us can relate to, of going, I don't know what to do in this situation. This is maybe beyond what I know what to do. So I was very much thinking, how do you keep calm and carry on with this? So that's where the book came from, because I thought my clients, incredible clients, have been through huge things, different from this, but in a similar frightened, is when you're very frightened and you just think, I don't know what to do. And I thought, my goodness, I'm surrounded by hundreds of fellow military wives. Like, what are they doing? Who is coming through this in some way that I can learn from? And also I knew personally and professionally that some wives were compensating or coping with increased alcohol intake, self-medicating with drugs in some way, or withdrawing and just sort of sleeping all day, in less positive ways. And I thought, heck, I don't want that to be me. So that's where the book came from, as a response to, I think I need to find out how to get through a very frightening situation where any minute of the day or night, my husband could have been killed or come back wounded or, traumatized. And I thought, I can't just exist for 7 months and not know how to keep calm and carry on, how to stay calm and content, is what I turned that into. I wasn't allowed to use that phrase, at least it's been copyrighted. So, but I think stay calm and content is better anyway.
Yeah, I suppose it's not just frightened, it's terrified, isn't it? It's completely terrified, and it's intense. That's really intense. That must be really intense. I mean, I've been through terrifying situations, not exactly that, but it is as opposed for me, and I think you posted something like this on LinkedIn, but it was to do with work, but it could be applied in this situation. And what I did was, I thought, right, I need to have enough sleep. I need to eat properly. I need to exercise.
Absolutely, yeah.
And to have a firm ground, a base on which I can operate now. And it became all the more important for all of those things to happen. I think, it was to do with work that you posted, and it was sort of a pie chart.
Pie chart, yeah. And
it sort of said what people expect to have to do when you want work progress or good work outcomes. And it says, big pie chart full of all your time at work. And what you actually need to do is, and then the
time off, healthy eating, exercise, and a third of hard work, or something, about a third, wasn't it? Not 100% hard work. No,
that's it.
Exactly.
So that was a lovely book. It's available on Amazon at the moment. Schools, you also go in schools as well. And I like this testimonial. Kat provided a witty and original way to approach resilience and mental health. Her talk had an audience of 250 boys captivated. With a blend of analysis and diagnosis, Kat's insistence upon the need to question our fears before tackling any steps made her stand out from any other talks that have been given on this topic. To walk into a class following this talk and have 20 lively 15-year-olds want to discuss the issues is high praise indeed. So you must be...
Wow, yeah.
It's good to
I use a metaphor in that one if you want to sort of understand the difference, I think, with what they're talking about there. I really like that review because I do focus on challenging the fear, because if you talk about, how we've just said, filling up the pie chart sort of thing, but if you don't understand kind of why, so I use the analogy or metaphor of a hot air balloon, and probably did with that talk, because I like to think of the basket of the hot air balloon is where all the stuff goes. That's heavy. And that's really, I use it to think about what weighs us down in some way. So if we don't feel good enough, So the truth is, negative emotions come from fear. So the first thing I had to realize with my husband out in that situation and me feeling all these emotions of sort of frustration, anger in some ways, I noticed I would start to just feel out of control and negative. I was afraid, so we've got to figure out what are we afraid of. And that's what goes in the basket. And it really only boils down to either that we're not good enough in some way or that we're not loved enough. Like that inner fear says, I don't have the resources to cope with this. I'm not good enough to cope with this. And actually, that's the first fear, that FEAR, false evidence appearing real. Okay. It's not true that we're not good enough to cope with something. It might be that we need to ask for help. We might need support from other people. We might need some new strategies, but it fundamentally isn't true that we are not enough. But we actually sort of feel inadequate in some way. And when we feel like that and that basket feels really heavy and overwhelming, I then come to the ropes of the balloon, that what we tend to do, it's fight or flight response, you see, when we're kind of got that inner kind of chimp, if you might have heard of the chimp paradox. We tend to either take it out on ourselves or take it out on others, kind of escape or attack. And that's like the ropes of this hot air balloon that can tie it to the ground even more. So that's what I saw other people and myself starting to do. If you start to think, get defensive, or you say, oh, God, it's all right for other people and they just don't understand. And you say, oh, the children are just driving me crazy. You're actually expressing your fear and anxiety, but you're taking it out on other people and projecting it. So that doesn't get you anywhere, which is then, so we have to challenge the fears. We've got to say, does this basket need to be so big? Like, what is it that I'm really afraid of? Is it really going to happen? Is it true that I can't cope with whatever I fear, even if it does happen? So in schools, it could be, I'm afraid of being left out. I'm afraid that my friends don't really like me, or that these tests or exams are going to define how I should feel about myself. And I challenge all those fears and say nothing defines how you feel about yourself except you. You have to keep that. I use a kind of, again, analogy of the fire in the balloon to say that's the fire of self-worth. The only way you get that warm air into the hot air balloon and lift up and travel somewhere is by having that fire of self-worth saying, I am always enough. But what brings me oxygen and warm air is what I need to figure out. How do I lift up my self-confidence, self-belief? What do I love? That's where you come into what you said at the exercise, the healthy eating, maybe the music, the hobbies, the interests. And we fill up our balloon in our own way, but we must recognize it's got to be way bigger than the basket of fear. Because the basket of fear will weigh us down if it isn't. It'll feel really heavy and all the things I'm not good at. I'm kind of get those out of the basket. That basket needs to be as small as possible. We've all got our fears, we've all got our insecurities, but keep them as small as you can. Otherwise, you'll never lift it up. Get them out. I challenge the fears first and say, we don't want to be carrying all these around. They don't belong there. They're not true.
Yeah. Oh, that's we need a lift off, don't we?
Yeah, definitely.
And I suppose you sort of done this in response to, it says 1 in 10 children aged 5 to 16 will in the UK has clinically diagnosable mental health problem. That's big, isn't it? That's
yeah.
I can imagine it though, because I just think as well, you see, if they were talking about those numbers, and I heard sort of an analogy on this, another, I think it was a Netflix show I was watching about obesity, but it can apply here. He says, right, if you've got a classroom of 30 children and one of them is obese, you could arguably say that it is an issue with what that child's eating, that child's parenting, that child's environment. You could. But if we're talking about higher numbers, like half, 3/4 of that class are obese, then you need to start looking at the environment that they're in, the things, the social construct around them, the environment of everyone. What are we bathing people in? For children, I'm not so sure that the school structure at the moment, maybe that we've got, is helping. Yes, there are exams, but there's constant sort of pressure to progress fast. They get outstanding results, I think, in children's reading at such a young age. But are we then missing something else out? Why are so many feeling this way? And people like yourself can come in and help the situation and treat that. But I think we've got to kind of look
and prevent it.
Yeah, prevention.
And that's my passion with schools, that in recent years, I've qualified as a strength psychology coach through StrengthScope. And I'm very passionate about, I think I'm the only person I know of, because I am sort of creative and very motivated with children, is to take that as young as possible. So people use that in the workplace to focus on what people are instead of what they're not. How do we bring out the best in ourselves and our team, to see the positive. But if you can do that with 10-year-olds, and this is just one of the things I might talk about, is how about finding the unique strengths as young as possible and realizing that, you're naturally creative and that's brilliant, rather than, because we use these sort of 3 circles where the top one would be what you want, or maybe clarify or classify that as success, whatever that means, which is happiness, really, at the end of the day, depending what our happiness means, how you define it. So that would be the top circle. And then if you imagine a circle sort of interweaving with it or crossing over slightly, that would be skills. And that's what the school are teaching and testing. They're testing skills that can be learnt. But the third circle that then overlaps the other 2, so that all 3 of them overlap a little bit in the middle, is the natural strengths. And that's our personality, what makes us who we are, what we're naturally energized by. And once I found out what my 7 are, and it's not difficult to do. I do it live with a class. I've done it with year 5s and year 6s, which people might know are kind of 10, 11-year-olds, plus all the way through secondary schools. Once you find that out, you realize, why you're going to want to do what you do. And they can't be taught. And that's what a lot of employers, and the boost in confidence is amazing to see people say, I'm naturally empathetic, or I'm naturally creative, I'm flexible, or I'm detailed, or I've got good critical thinking skills or good common sense. That's what I bring. And I would do that all day because it energizes me. So it's how you do something, not just what you do. Yeah. And once I explain that, they kind of go, oh, I see, it's not just about what you're tested on. And I often share, again, I love my diagrams, my metaphors, pictures. So one of the pictures would be, I would draw on the board, particularly for children, because we're talking about this, but I draw on a board, a big circle, and I would do lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of dots. So just with a pen, on the whiteboard, dot, 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 maybe at least 100. And then I'll draw a little circle around 2 of them. And I'll say, what am I trying to show there? And really, I'm trying to show, if they're, say, anxious about SATs, that they get tested in maths and English at the age of 11, I say that SATs is testing 2 of those dots out of hundreds. Look at what makes you who you are, all these things you're good at, and skills and strengths, and, who's the dancer, who's a musician, who can sing, who can draw, who can whatever. And SATs test 2 of them. And yet children will be there anxious, thinking that it defines how they should feel about themselves based on how well they do in this, in my mind, awful test that shouldn't be defining children and their measure of success. It's not true. It's,
and it's a shame. It's a shame that in schools, it's just about academia. There should be more exercise, more information on nutrition, more information.
Yeah. And there is a lot, to be fair. The schools I go into are amazing. Yeah. It's just, do the children pick up the message? I just do everything. I think teachers and I and everyone, we are doing the best we can, but always can do better. To sort of say, your opinion of yourself is what matters the most. And let's talk about that. Yeah. How do you compare yourself to others? It's how about win-win? How about I'm okay, you're okay? How about we're equal but different? And if these tests pit us against each other and, you did best in the class, we've got to sort of mitigate that and say, there's so many things that make you who you are. But first and foremost, you have to recognize what you are instead of focusing on what you're not.
Yeah.
And if school isn't getting that right balance, then I still see so many children saying, I can tell you what I'm not. not as good as them, I can't do this. So, and then it sort of seems sad that it doesn't come in somehow. They don't let it in somehow. We have this negativity bias, which is what I will share with them a lot, a little video that explains it. That says, because of our cycle, throughout evolution, the fact that we're still here is that our ancestors going way, 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 way generations back survived. They avoided, the saber-toothed tiger or the tribe that came with their spears, which means we have a negativity bias. We will naturally notice what we should be worrying about. And we're not very good at saying, notice the basket instead of the big hot air balloon, as I put it. You'll focus on the basket and what you're not and what weighs you down. But it says statistically, we need at least 5 things to outweigh one negative, needs 5 positives to outweigh it. Yeah. Otherwise, we just think the day's been awful because one thing went wrong,
Well, yeah, I mean, the hot air balloon. That is
definitely.
I mentioned you do webinars as well. That's for generally for workplaces as well. And again, you build positive relationships, particularly with difficult individuals.
Yeah.
I like this one, and it kind of now feeds into talking about relationships, going a bit deeper into relationships. You've got an article on how to help someone who's struggling, and I quite like it. Do you want to guide us through it? There's one particular, it's the end bit that I love, and that question you get to at the end.
Remind me.
And the first one is use the word confidence, and you're talking about your. I think you've got 2 articles actually that cover this, but the first one is you're talking about a friend and how to help a friend, and use the word confidence. And the first question is, how confident are you feeling about friendships at the moment, for example?
Yeah.
And then you go on to say, use scaling questions.
That means 0 to 10. Yeah.
Yeah. So how much do you like whatever it is at the moment, just so you can get an insight into what they're thinking. And it says, how much did you used to like it? What has made you lower, you think? And this will provide insight. And then there's a finale. Do you want to say the finale about shielding them, pushing them, instead of shielding and pushing?
Oh yeah, stand side by side. Yeah, so again, it's a little analogy, or however you want to put it, that often if we want to help someone and we're worried about them, we'll naturally either try and shield them from something, which is sort of trying to step in front of them and snowplow. I mean, it often people talk about it in terms of parenting. They say a snowplow parent will try and, remove the obstacle basically by standing in front of the child and say, don't worry, I'll handle it, you step. But really it sends the message of, you can't cope with this. You need mummy to take care of it. And of course, if they're very little, then of course we have to be removing obstacles. But the point is we might carry on doing that. And the person we're actually trying to help ends up having the message, I can't handle this. It disempowers them. And then the opposite one is you might sort of stand behind and kind of prod the person in the back, metaphorically going, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I did this. My friend did that. Why don't you try this one? And again, the person you want to help. And I'm thinking of my son here. So I think the example in that article I was actually sharing with my 11-year-old son, he was at that point, and he was struggling with maths. I could have snowplowed and gone in, right, I'll speak to the teacher about maybe she's not helping you enough. In this way, don't do that. Or I could have done, maybe not trying hard enough. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? And ouch, again, you're just going to feel prodded. So I was trying to say the stand by side approach is, okay, how out of 10 do you feel about, let's just keep it as maths. And he said, 6, how did you used to feel? Well, I used to feel an 8 or a 9. Okay. Can you say a little bit about what you think has changed that? I don't know, I'm wanting to empower him to figure out what's going on. And then together, my favorite question, which you explore, that is to say, how can I be most helpful? So the most empowering question is, what I am right here. I'm side by side. I will do anything I can to support you, but you've got this. You are you. You will be able to figure out what you think is most helpful so that you can get back to feeling confident or able to cope with whatever it is. And that's the part where real listening comes in. And even if they don't know the answer, it's kind of saying, I'm right here until you know the answer. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I'm not going to say, you might need to suggest a few things. So I think I said, I think I gave some options. And what actually happened was that my mother-in-law is a maths teacher, a retired maths teacher. So one of the options we looked at is, well, grandma might be able to come round and support you a little bit. Would that be helpful with your confidence? Oh yeah, that would be amazing. I said, well, grandma would love that. So she still comes weekly, and now he's 13, he's year 8. But we listened, and I didn't just say, yeah. So that's what I feel is important. Have that conversation.
Yeah, I love that question. What would be most helpful?
And really, honestly, that came from me realizing that nobody had asked me that question. So if
really good, yeah.
How often are we really asked that question? I hope people are. And how often have I really asked that question? Till I realised this, I thought, oh, goodness me, I'm just as guilty as anyone else of going, why don't you do this and try that? Or, and actually it takes quite a lot of courage. I mean, I talk about a relationship arch with relationships, that we're side by side, and it can take a lot of courage to sort of say, I'm okay, you're okay, I'm here for you, but I'm not going to let my own fear, my own anxiety transfer it to needing to help you no matter what. I have to be sort of confident enough in myself to say, I can be here, but I don't have to take over.
Yeah.
So, and that takes quite a lot of self-insight. But yes, when I realized I was going through that difficult experience with my husband away, and I sort of realized that I was saying yes to everybody's helpful offers, because you sort of have to. If people say, shall I do this, shall I do that? And you're in a vulnerable situation, you sort of say yes, because what other choice do you have? You don't really want to say, actually, this would be more helpful.
Actually, that way.
Well, because if you say, actually, this would be more helpful, you worry that they're either going to say, oh, well, I can't do that, or, oh, well, I thought you'd be grateful for something, or not. Hopefully they wouldn't, but you're in a vulnerable position. You don't want to you're not being asked the question, how can I be most helpful? You're being sort of asked, is this helpful? So you say, oh, yes, thank you. But actually the truth is, what would be more helpful? But they're not asking that often.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of asking anyone out there, what I try to do is, if someone is vulnerable, say, I'm right here. I'll do anything I can. If I can't do it, I will say, but you have permission to tell me what you think would be most helpful. Yeah. And if I can't do it, I'll do my best, or we'll find someone else who can help you in that way.
Yes.
But you have permission to say, because I would have loved to have said, what would be most helpful is if, I don't know, come and just be with me. I'm lonely. I'm scared. I'm sad. Come and visit, or whatever.
Yeah. And that's nice, isn't it? That's also a nice thing to say, what you've just said there, about, you can tell me whatever. I might not be able to do that, but I will do my, and then that relieves the guilt of the other person telling them exactly what they need.
Because often the reason you don't say is because you're thinking, I don't want to put that pressure on that you have to then fulfill this need. Yeah. So we don't say what the need really is, because we're thinking, but I can't ask that of you. And a really good friend or family member would be saying, ask it anyway, and then we'll figure out how to meet that need. And if it can't be me, I will be honest. Because we want to support each other. We don't want to, if you think about this arch, I often say in healthy relationships, you've got to have a healthy distance. You're not saying I need to lean on you completely, and then there'll be no space between the pillars of the arch. You have to have a sort of a healthy distance and support each other as much as possible, whilst also being a separate person, and also know that I like to think of a sort of, if people are imagining a big tall aqueduct kind of thing with these beautiful big arches and big pillars. Mm-hmm. I think we all have multiple relationships. We're not just asking everything of one person. even if they are who we're married to, or perhaps, we've got more relationships than that. And we need maybe different things from different people, and that's okay. And we offer things to different people, but we're all in this together. We're all making this beautiful bridge, from one place to another together, and we rely on each other. And that's,
Yeah, that's really nice. So let's go deeper into relationships. So in relationships, I suppose there's a big question of what makes a good relationship? What makes a good relationship? And even when there's no particular problem there, what can make it better?
Right. So even when there's I would say it always comes down to sort of how we feel about ourselves. Are we our best self, and are we bringing out the best in ourselves and each other? So the place to begin is always sort of self-awareness, I guess. And one thing I do think about is about our 6 sort of emotional needs. So say somebody's thinking, I think things are fine, but maybe there's something, I'm not quite sure why I don't feel completely at my best. So they'd come to that scaling question again. I might say, how are you feeling about yourself out of 10 and about the relationship or something? So one thing I might explore is the 6 human needs. And the first one is certainty and comfort. So the first thing we need as humans is to feel secure and sort of safe. So sometimes that might be fundamentally, actually, that can be trust in relationships, thinking about, do I feel completely sure and certain and safe? Has there been emotional wounds in the past that keep resurfacing? And actually, I think there's some things we need to talk about, because I've got questions about, the trust, really. But that might be the first place to start. If that one is completely fine and you're completely trusting, and then it might be the next one, which is variety. Actually, you can become quite bored if you've got certainty and comfort but no variety and interest. Then it could be, are we sharing enough interest? Do we need to find something different, like either just for myself or both of us? What might bring us a bit more variety and interest? After that, it's about that love and connection. Well, not after that, this can be obviously very important as well, but how connected and loved do we feel? And then, again, to share with your viewers, there's the 5 love languages, not to get diverted, but they're touch. I know. So you might speak different emotional languages in terms of your connection. So one person might be very words. It matters what you say. And you might come from a family where you said, I love you a lot, or, you're doing really well. Someone else might never have heard that. It's not something their family didn't say it all the time. So it's quite difficult for them to communicate in that way, but the other partner is too. So you are really connected to each other, but you're speaking slightly different languages, because the other partner might be more touchy. They share love through hugs and intimacy. Another one will be gifts. Some people they might not be expensive, but once they get that little thoughtful gift, that's it. That makes me feel loved and valued. Yeah. And then what the other acts of service would be my husband's. If I make him a cup of tea, just that kind of, would you like a cup of tea? It's not just a cup of tea. It says, I care about you and thinking of you. It's a little act of love. You see what I mean? Because it's an act of service. It's saying, I've done this for you. Yeah. So, and that would be his. So it's not so much you can say, I love you, but if you don't even make me a cup of tea, then you don't love me. You see what I mean? And then another final one will be quality time. So some people, out of all of those, it will be time, and that would really be mine. It would be how we're spending time together. Yeah. That's what matters most to me. Makes me feel most loved when we're time together. So that's that. And then go back to the needs. So that would be the love and connection. How connected do we feel? Are we speaking the same language? And then final 3 needs are growth. So again, is one person, or are you in your relationship feeling sort of stagnant in some way? You're not really growing. Do you feel significant? Again, that could be in your working life, your personal life. And then finally, it's contribution. So they're the sort of 6. I think it's certainty, variety, love and connection, significance, growth, and contribution. So those are 6 emotional needs. I'm trying to figure out, how do I feel out of 10, based on those.
Okay. And that's kind of one of the things that looking at good relationships. When I've asked, so another person on the show is a sleep expert. So I'll often ask, out there, is there any questions on sleep? And I had floods of them on sleep. When I asked about relationships, there was like nothing. And I just wonder, what is that? Is that a reluctance for people to ask help about relationships? I don't know, maybe loyalty to other people that they have relationships with that they don't want to ask a question? Or is it shame that one or more of their relationships are not really as good as they might be? I don't know. So I think for a lot of people, I think it's a difficult topic. And actually, I would include me and myself with that. And I'm struggling to find, I don't know, questions of maybe specific scenarios, because I think, oh, that's just, showing me up or whatever.
I will have heard everything if it makes you feel any better. So no, there were, certainly, maybe it's that behind closed doors, the thing, or I don't know, that maybe you said when you said shame, I don't know, is it that we don't want to let people into how we feel sometimes, or the doubts and fears, and we think everyone else's relationships might be okay because that's what you see. Yeah. And maybe people don't say a lot, so it's hard to think. You think often with me, it's that sort of inner little voice that says, "Is it just me? Maybe it's just me." And of course, it never is. Yeah. But maybe there's one of those going on in relationships.
So now sometimes you can, if you have a difficult person or someone you don't like, sometimes you can just walk away and not have involvement in that with that person. And other times it's not so easy, like it's your work colleague, and it's not so easy to get another job or whatnot. How do you tackle that one? Because it's really difficult. Because I did actually speak to someone who said their friend, let me think which one this was now. Sometime at work. Yeah, so this friend had someone who they worked with that had an issue, I think, with depression. She was taking on some of her workload. It then got too much for her and she left her job. So I suppose there's various examples where a work colleague or someone that you work with is difficult, but you've got to see them every day. What would you suggest? Where would you start from, or what would you suggest in that scenario? Would it be actually make steps towards leaving your job, or ultimately have that as your ultimate get out? But what would you do meantime, or what would you try?
Yeah, it can be very, very difficult. I mean, my first thought is it's to disentangle somehow, possibly by going to speak to a counsellor or someone. What's your stuff versus their stuff? Because there's something called projection. Are they and personalization? So if they're kind of projecting their own fears or insecurities, or however you put them onto you, and then you're actually taking them personally and sort of taking them as your own, then that's trying to disentangle. Is this really my stuff, or is it theirs? There would be that first going on of trying to, and then we're not. So I actually talk about a fiery scenario with relationships, and the first one's fear. Figuring out what are you really afraid of. The I is I'm okay, you're okay. So ideally, you're trying to get to the situation of we're both equal but different. The E is expectations. So are their expectations of you unrealistic, or the other way around? You know, if it is a colleague, they should be this, they should be that, they shouldn't be this. Is that realistic? Are they doing that to you? Then R is responsibility, figuring out what are you responsible for and what are you not, you know, and that is important in relationships. Trying to say, actually, I'm taking more responsibility than I should here. This is not my responsibility. They're responsible for their behavior. They're responsible for how they feel about themselves. We all have to be responsible for our behavior and how we feel and, you know, our emotions. Nobody can make you feel anything without your consent and all of that. But obviously, there is this responsibility of how we interact with each other. And then finally, the Y of fiery is your communication. And that is, once you sort of have thought through all of those things and you figured out, I think this is what's going on. How do I decide to communicate? You know, do I need to ask some questions to find out some more? That would be listening more. You know, if I listen more and find out a little bit more, maybe it's going to change my perspective. Do I need to be more positive in my communication? Or like you say, when I've tried all of that, is this a relationship that, having thought all of that through, taken responsibility, check my expectations, check my fears, I'm okay, you're okay, all the rest of it, actually, this is toxic, you know, potentially. And it's time to end this relationship or leave this job or whatever it might be.
Yeah, sometimes it comes to that ultimate.
Yeah, and that is something, you know, if the viewers are interested, I do have that as a kind of a checklist of sort of a series of questions.
Oh, okay.
You know, think about this. That's the FIERY. And it's just designed to be a bit of a helpful in any relationship scenario. You could go through those and just little trigger questions to go, oh, that's a point. Okay, that's true. I hadn't thought about what my expectations are and whether they're fair and what are their expectations of me. And often labels as well, you know, with relationships, they're all a series of labels. If you think about it, it's just mother, daughter, husband, wife, colleague, friend. You know, there's actually sort of expectations attached to labels. Have we checked out if they're the same?
Yeah.
You know, you're my boss, you should, or you're, you know, whatever it might be, or you're my sister, I can't believe you didn't do this. And kind of, I didn't realize that was your version of what a sister must do. You know, have you checked it out? Because we can get really kind of, I don't know, embroiled in negative relationships when we haven't checked out what we mean by that label and what we expect.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing for me is relationships. I'm a busy working mom, and I have so little time. And the most important relationships to me are the ones with my children. So in my little free time that I've got, I can kind of spend time with them. But it does mean that other friendships, other relationships just are put to one side. And I quite readily accept it, you know, that I'm at this stage in my life, I don't have time for other relationships that much. But it does sort of throw up a few things for me, you know. I have friends, for example, I have friends in London who are probably just, I don't know, communicate via social media, you know, and maybe ring once a year. I have other friends around where I live, but I do sometimes think, what a shame that I don't have time for these other friendships. And I suppose, what would you say? I don't know, what would you say to me being the person with no time? What would you say to other people who are expecting more from me, more time from me in their relationships with me? The guilt factor, you know, I'm sorry that I can't do every week or speak to you every week, or, you know, what advice might you have there?
Well, first of all, I say I'm with you. You know, it's very hard. And I think because, again, speaking personally here for a second, really, is that as the children change ages, as we change, as you say, we're all a slightly different version of ourselves each day. So it's really only about, my sort of phrase at the moment, it's one day at a time. You know, we can only really sort of take note of those feelings. Oh, there is a bit of guilt there, or oh, there is a bit of sadness there that I haven't tweeted that person. Oh, you know, and just try and check out our expectations as well, you know, and our motivations for things, I suppose. Is the guilt looming large today, and I'm giving my children all of my attention because why? What is my driver with that, you know? But this goes quite deep in a way, because we'll be judging ourselves on criteria that come from a variety of sources. Does it come from society? That, you know, I talk about filters, kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, if you've heard of that. You know, there'll be like musts and shoulds and sort of quite black and white thinking and all these things that might be going on that colour our decisions and how we think we must be living. So it's sort of trying to figure all of that out and say, what's the closest motivation to me I can get, you know, and actually, if I know I'm doing my best, all we have to do is say, you know, at the end of the day, we come to, my name's Kat and I'm doing my best. And today, this is what feels right to me. And I don't have to apologise about that. I just might need to communicate that that's just how it feels, that this is the most important thing and that's the best I can do, you know. Yeah. And what I share with people as well is our decisions come down to kind of two things, like love or fear. I do my hand like that so it's again trying to figure out, is my behaviour driven by fear? So generally, I would say try and avoid that it being. So if you were staying in touch with friends and actually sort of thought, I think I'm just doing it out of fear, really, and expectation, and not because it's really what I really want to do, you know. Whereas if it is actually love, and you know what, I love that we do this together, or that I get together with some military wives kind of once a year or twice a year, you know, and it's not for fear, it's for love, because we love to what that shared, you know, experiences have been. So it's just checking that out for ourselves. And again, it could work the other way. Is our parenting driven by fear? You know, I must be like this. I must try and be a good enough mom. I have to be seen to do this, and I have to have my nails done, and I have to wear this kind of stuff, you know. Oh, no, that's kind of fear-driven behaviour of society is telling me I'm not good enough unless, you know, that's not true.
Yeah.
You know, go for the love, like kind of who am I? What do I care about? What do I want to wear? Like, do I care if my nails are done or not? You know, Is it really me? And if it is, fine. If you love having your nails done, fine. If you don't, that's fine too. There's no, it's up to her. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, no, it's a food for thought really for me, because where you said, well, what am I expecting from myself? What do I expect? I don't know, it to be. And I think, you know, deep down, I think this is what I expect for me to be in a situation where I'm, you know, whilst they're young at least, as sort of stay-at-home mum. I'm there for them after school, but I'm not. I can't be. So every other weekend, I make it really special, really good quality time together. Mm-hmm. And that's how I make up for it, I guess. That's how, you know, because I do think, I'm not sure it's guilt, but I do sort of think, you know, it's a shame that they are in after school care and this. So, yeah. So do I think to myself, well, I will spend that time, you know, going to see a friend? It just doesn't sit well with me when, you know, my children don't, and well, in my opinion, spend enough time with me. So I don't know, it is expectation, but would I do it any different? No, probably not. Probably not for now, as you say,
yeah.
As time moves on. So probably.
And I also like to think, you know, we come back to the hot air balloon, is I sort of see it like a jigsaw puzzle that, you know, all the different pieces, there might be slightly different sizes. Your children will be a huge piece. Obviously, our partner will be a big piece if we have one. Hobbies and interests and friends. And so it's sort of just almost literally drawing that out is quite a good exercise. I think I have a similar one in my book, but since then I've made it more of the hot air balloon idea. And if you challenge yourself to actually draw it, your sort of balloon, or draw it as a circle, we're coming back to that pie chart. It's sort of about saying, if I drew it and actually I realized that 90%, way more real time than I'd realized is given to my children, who actually there is some space to put in a coffee with a friend. And I don't think I'm fundamentally taking much away from them. If you had that jigsaw puzzle, there'd be a lot of pieces there, and they might be small, but they could be important. And to have them missing would be sad, So if you're thinking, well, that friend might be just a small piece, but they're an important piece.
Yeah.
And even if it was only once every 6 months, I am going to make the time to give them a call, because if the piece wasn't there, I would have lost part of who I am. And I don't want to, some people's balloon, they might, if they were colouring it in all different colours, you kind of imagine it. Mm-hmm. I will have people come to me and say, well, it's just all my partner and children, that's it. And I'm kind of thinking, oh, okay, well, and that's fine if you're happy with that. But really, is it 2 colours? There's a rainbow kind of, what else is in there? And that's what I realised again, as we are the military family. And I realised that 2 pieces that hadn't been there since I was a child was ballet. I love ballet dancing. I love it. And it's so important. And I've fought to kind of the classes change, the teachers leave, but we've just had a new teacher, and about the last 6 weeks, Monday afternoon at 2:00, the children are in school. I work for myself, so I've worked out my diary to say 2:00 on a Monday, I do an hour of ballet. And it's a piece that wouldn't be in your jigsaw puzzle maybe, but it's in mine. And then the other thing would be playing in a brass band, which again, it's not sexy to other people, but on a Thursday night, I go and I play tenor horn in a brass band, because again, it coming back to those needs, it meets all those needs of certainty, variety, connection, significance, and it gives me that oxygen and it fills that piece. So it's sort of just trying to get to know yourself and go, no, is it a big piece? Is it a little piece? If it wasn't there, would I miss it? Does that? Even
if it's a sort of temporary, because in my mind now, what just popped up is netball. I'd love to kind of join a team and just do a season. Maybe when I mentioned temporary, can someone look at, because it's generally in the evenings. This is awkward for me because of childcare. So, but maybe it wouldn't be awkward if I just I'm just going to do 10 weeks of this, and that's it, and that'll feel, that'll be a part of things.
Yeah, a friend of mine plays netball, and I went back with her at the beginning and just laughed and laughed. It was like being a 14-year-old again. I just loved it. And I didn't have space to put that in my jigsaw, because I thought, well, I've got ballet, I've got brass band, I won't, that's kind of getting a bit much. But I loved it. It was great fun to go just once, and she carried on. So yeah, netball, she goes, it's coming back to those 6 needs again. If it really brought you that connection with people, that variety, that growth, that significance, you're in a team, those, you can meet all 6 in one go. And often things like team sports, choirs, bands, the Military Wives film is about to come out, talking about the Military Wives choirs, and Gareth Malone, it's due out this month. And the reason that was so critical, speaking as a military wife, was because meeting those emotional needs in one go, joining something like a choir, is just really helped to lift, especially with all that shared experience. And I was watching that program whilst I was writing the book, that, it all sort of comes together, and now the film's coming out. So it's quite amazing to think I was living through what they were living through at the time that it was filmed. The Gareth Malone series was filmed. Yeah.
Wow. And your book, actually, isn't it? 50% of the profits go to?
Yes, to counselling charities. Yeah.
To the counselling charities. Yeah. So, right. And let's look at the next question. What have I got here? Cover that one. Another one for me is, I find it difficult with relationships when, to me, they're asking too much of me, whether that be to do too much, to help them too much with X, Y, Z, to be there for them too much. Something is too much, and I need to, you could say, well, okay, you need to set boundaries. But this is where my issue comes in. I get tired of setting boundaries and maintaining them. If I feel like I'm spending too much time on setting boundaries and maintaining them, I'm out of there. And I don't know if there's a way of making setting boundaries easier or less time consuming or less exhausting. I don't know. But I don't know. For example, I don't know. You could take it as something so simple as making a cup of tea for each other. Where I find someone is, finding it normal for them to ask me to make two for them, whereas they only would make one for me. And, just that unfairness, and where I have to step in and say, actually, come on, then it's your turn or whatever. And I just wonder, have you got any, I don't know, tips on?
It's a tricky one. I don't think I've been asked that often. But one thing that's just come to me for some reason, I think like you sort of said it then, is sometimes humour is quite a helpful one. Like if you know your boundary and you are sort of tired of having to reinforce it, there are ways for some reason coming to my mind. It's not really maybe a boundary thing, but it's sort of boundaries and expectations. Are they interlinked? I think so. I had one that it's the little comments of I felt I have to whiz around the house and have my house all perfect when certain relatives might be coming over. And I don't know if that's really what you're saying, but it was sort of about then making a joke and just saying, oh, well, you sort of find me as you take me, and kind of putting things out there that say things like, good friends don't judge you on your house or something. They just judge you on whether you've got a bottle of wine or, kind of little thing. And maybe people will call that passive aggressive, but it's sort of trying to communicate, this is who I am. This is what I can offer. And this is what I can't, and so I won't keep overstepping my boundaries because they're my boundaries. And I'm going to maybe not be aggressive about communicating them, but I may just have to turn to humour and say, sorry, you're going to have to make your own. I'm done. I don't know. Does that?
Oh, is that what time it is? I'm going to bed. You have to make your own.
Yeah, it's sort of self-care boundaries. Because again, I'm thinking of, I've just had a client this morning saying that the mum will run around and do everything. She's sort of in her 20s. And she's gone back to the home for a bit. So the mum will sort of run around, but won't accept help, do all the cooking, all the rest of it and everything, and then be the martyr going, oh, you don't understand how hard it is having you home,
Yeah.
And you think that's her boundary issue, I think, isn't it? That she's not saying, you want to take responsibility for what you will do and what you won't. And if you won't do it, you don't have to be sort of mean about it or do it and then be a martyr. This mum just needs to say, what are the roles here? What am I happy with and what am I not? And try to say, this is who I am. I'm more than happy to do this, but I won't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than do it and then moan about it.
Yeah, well, my strategy is...
please share. I'll learn from you.
But my strategy is, look, if I'm spending too much time on reinforcing boundaries, then I'm not going to see you. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but it is, at my time, I think one of my things is my time is so precious. I've got, little time. And I don't want to be spending it on that. I don't want to be spending it on that. And yes, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics of what you're talking about, but the other thing I like to do with people is once you find out their personality strengths, which again, if people want to get in touch with me, it's not difficult. It doesn't actually take very long. So we can even do it for fun and have another podcast about it. But one of your strengths could be creativity. And I might sort of challenge you to say, I hear what you're saying, that relationship's really starting to frustrate you and that boundary kind of protecting is getting exhausting. But there might be a creative way that you hadn't let yourself think of, where you could actually meet your needs in a different way that maybe is, switch that scenario around and go, oh, that works. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know whether, I suppose I'm thinking of if somebody was coming round to your house and kept staying too long, then that could be a boundary, couldn't it? You sort of said, I told them I was available for an hour and they keep staying 3 hours, and I then have to make tea for the children and they're still here, and do you know what? It's not worth it. Whereas we might have to be creative about like shifting the environment, shifting the way to do that, so that the relationship is gone. It just functions in a different way.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of find out more about that, because children in a way push your boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that might be useful there as well. Yeah. Okay, next question. Did I ask the one about boundaries? Is there, like, I'm thinking you're going to say no, there isn't any set thing about this, but is there any set number of close relationships you ideally would have? Number of acquaintances, close family members, or does it really just depend on your type of personality? Because I know, I personally know I don't need a lot of time from anyone, and I know other people I see do need a lot of time with people to talk about things, to do things with. Does it just depend? Does it just depend on who you are?
Yeah, I suppose a couple of things are coming to my mind. The first one is that love and fear again. That again, it could be, what are your drivers? And if some people could be keeping all those relationships because of some sort of, it comes back to that self-worth, that basket, am I good enough? So if people are quite honest with themselves, it could be that a lot of those relationships are quite superficial, but it's about fear driven, that inner child didn't feel good enough unless she was in the schools. So I'm still keep up with all these, as if you actually feel, but for others, it may not be that at all. It's not a fear driven thing. They just love spending time with all those different people. So it's sort of, that's the fundamental way that we make our decisions, so if I feel I have the close connections that I need and they're the ones that matter most to me, then there's no number on that, is there? It sort of depends. And then the other thing I'd say, since I've done the strength psychology element, there's one of the natural strengths, it's called relationship building. And it's not one of my top 7. It's quite close there, but that's people that are really energized so strength is about what energizes you, what you would naturally do kind of almost all the time. You just can't help it. This is who you are. And some people are very energized by relationship building. So they just love making new friends. They love going to places with new people. It's again, and that would fit in with that love. It's not about fear. It's about love. It makes me who I am. I feel really kind of upbeat and, so that would just be that in overdrive. I have seen that come between couples, because you'll almost say, well, am I not enough? Like, you're constantly out there meeting new people and wanting to, like one example, a couple were on a holiday and the husband's down in the bar, like meeting new friends and having this great time. Oh, come on, let's stay here. The kids are fine, And that was quite a difficult kind of relationship counselling scenario, not just for that reason, but for many other reasons. But it kind of, that was one of the strength differences between them. That she was like, I just don't understand it. I feel like I'm not enough because you're constantly there wanting to make new friends. Whereas he was a naturally very gregarious person and that sort of hadn't understood how that appears to his wife. Like, I'm right here and all you want to do is meet all these new people on holiday. So that was in overdrive for him, and he found it hard to control that and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it comes down to how different we are.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm just thinking of it like a scenario now. Like, so when I'm out as well, I don't feel it necessary to perhaps stay in my group that I've gone out with, and I will go off and talk to new people and etc. And I think some people within that group would expect me to stay there and only talk to them, and and it's tricky, isn't it, to manage all these situations?
Yeah,
interesting but tricky. Let's see. Talked about boundaries. The next thing is it sort of ties in with relationship, but it's sort of in a thing in general as well. People will often sort of come up with anecdotes or sayings or things that will highlight the situation as being correct or a correct way to handle the situation. And I kind of look at it and think, well, where is the line that statement stops being true? I'll just give you an example to kind of... So I was listening to a podcast and he was saying, right, I'm not offended by swearing, and there will be swear words on my podcast. And he said, he doesn't have a problem with that. And he said it's other people's problem or that have a problem with that. He said, well, why would they have a problem with it? He said, it's just words, it's just sounds. And he said, I think he was asking his sister, well, why do you have a problem with swearing? And she was saying, well, it's you're not intelligent when you swear or something. And he says, well, that's just it, isn't it? Someone's told you when you were young that unintellectual people swear. So that's your problem, not my problem. I'm going to swear to emphasize certain points in my podcast. That's what he was saying. But then obviously, which I don't have a particular issue with swearing. But then, I start to run through scenarios in my head about what he said. And I think he's right to an extent, but where is the line? Because then what if the swearing was being personal, like, well, F you or whatever? Is that the line where it becomes not true? That, actually it's not the other person's problem, it's your problem now. You're not just swearing randomly in a sentence, you're just swearing at somebody or towards somebody. Or is it when your sounds, your words create, incite violence? Or, where is this line where suddenly it's not the other person's problem or issue, it's that person that's doing it, it's their issue, am I kind of...
Yeah, I think what we're sort of hearing is when is it a healthy relationship between my opinion, your opinion, that's your interpretation, that's not my interpretation. And there's a new law on coercive control and toxic and kind of like bullying behaviour, actually. I don't know if that's really where you're going, but it can become, and that the difference with that is when it becomes, so I will be often exploring, if I've got couples, what's your truth? As in, what do you hear? What do you feel? And what's your truth? And you could say, well, I said this, and I didn't intend for you to hear that. Well, that's what I heard. So, that's my truth. Well, my truth is that I didn't mean it like that. So but that could be accepting that there's your truth, and then the truth, which is that both of you can be right at the same time, even though ultimately maybe someone else would have a completely different opinion of their truth of that situation was, but whatever, we're all entitled to our opinion. Mm. But I think what I'm seeing more of is sadly can be quite narcissistic relationships and toxic and coercive control, where it becomes, that's not your truth. You shouldn't feel like that. I didn't mean it like that. Therefore, you're wrong. And you don't feel that way because I didn't want you to. And it's like, but I do feel this way. Yeah. Well, you shouldn't, and that's about no empathy, no acceptance that what your intention might be heard differently. And therefore they are allowed their truth as to how they felt and what they heard. Just hear the difference. So, and that's very worrying when I hear or when couples are in, and a lot of people listening to this, I think it's a growing issue, and it can be very hard to realize that you're in a toxic relationship with a narcissist. And that could be somebody at work, coming back to what you said about work. It could be in families, can be siblings, parents, or it could be in couple relationships where you're sort of always thinking, oh, is it me? Like, maybe I haven't said it right, or maybe I shouldn't feel this way, or maybe I've misinterpreted it, or, oh, I don't know, and that would be an empath. So someone who's very empathetic is always almost trying to do the right thing. But if you're in a toxic relationship, you'll never do the right thing. They'll always find a way to go, oh no, now I'm upset because you did this. And it's toxic because they'll always twist it, and that's very scary.
Like it's not fair, like something's not fair. Like, I don't know, like for example, this example. So if one person was saying, yes, and when I come home from work, you can look after the children while I go to the gym twice a week. And the other person said, oh, yes. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. That's great. I can do that as well. And you can help me that way as well. And then the other person goes, well, that's just tit for tat, just turning it around something.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that fair? Isn't that, if you go out to work and I'm working at home looking after the children all day, isn't that fair? No, that's just tit for tat. Really? And it's just...
that's a tough one, because my husband and I'll be honest, sometimes, I sort of think, let's not play the game of who's got it harder game, and again, once you notice there's a bit of a pattern, sometimes we don't often do it, thankfully, but especially now we realise that it's a game you can end up doing. Oh, my day's been so hard. Well, I've been at home, when the children were younger, maybe played it a bit more. Who's got the harder time? Who deserves the break the most? Well, and it's sort of that, the win, if I win, you have to lose, or if you win, I lose. And we're not talking about that, are we? We're talking about a win-win. Like, why are we talking about a win-lose? Why are we battling? It's not if you win, I lose, and if I win, you lose. Let's be win-win. We've both had a hard day. Let's try and be as honest as we can about where we feel out of 10, coming back to those scaling questions. How do you feel out of 10? That's where the reason I like those is that it sort of gets you out of the whole, how do you feel? How's your day gone? Blah, 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 where are you at? It can be hard to, how are you doing out of 10? Not a 5. Okay. Well, what would help? What would make you a 6 or 7? I don't know, could I go to the gym? That might help. Yeah, what would help you be a 6 or a 7? Don't feel like the gym, but if maybe I could go tomorrow. I don't know. Sort of trying to just say, we're in this together. How can I be most helpful? What do you need? How are you feeling? Just be a bit more listening, talking, communication, not take things so personally.
Yeah, I can do this. Yeah. You can do that for me. It's fair. It's helping each other, basically.
Yeah. It takes that effort, doesn't it? Trying not to get trapped in the games people play. There's a book by that name.
Is there? Yeah.
Yeah. It's quite a famous sort of relationship book. And the other one is the parent, adult, and child. We can be in these 3 emotional states. So sometimes, adult to adult is that win-win. Really, I'm okay, you're okay. But what can happen is, oh, you should this, and be quite parental. Either nurturing and sort of a little bit patronising, or a bit critical. And then you can become childlike, which is like, no, it's just not fair. I can't believe you speak to me like that, You think, oh, this is it's like I'm a 5-year-old, And you can end up arguing or fighting like a pair of 5-year-olds. And you think, we're not being very adult at the moment, are we? And again, it's very natural as a thing, it's in us all, but we just have to try and get back to that adult place and say, okay, where's the win-win? Like, what are you saying? What's your truth? I'm listening. Let's try and be honest, and not just play these games of you should and all that. Complicated.
I hadn't thought about coercive control when I thought about this podcast, but it's a big, it's a big topic at the moment, isn't it? It's and how do you spot that you're in a coercive control relationship, the one being controlled? And
it can be very hard.
Yeah, and
you look at it before you see it. You think that you're in an I'm okay, you're okay. relationship to begin with, because if somebody is a narcissist, and I think there's a scale, as well. So it's one thing to be diagnosed as a narcissist, which, when does that ever happen? I don't, because how do you get diagnosed as a narcissist? You're not going to turn up and say, oh, I think I'm a narcissist. Like, the point is, you don't know. Like, how does the narcissist know that? Unless, and there are tests online of it, am I a narcissist? But why would you think that you are? Because you think you're right. And you think so narcissism is a disorder of empathy. You really cannot. So first of all, it would be, what signs of empathy are you receiving from this friend, partner, whatever? And if there's very few, so even these questions like we're saying of, oh, how was your day? Or how do you feel? Or, there won't be many that, and that responsibility. So, oh, I'm not feeling great because, well, you were late earlier on and I was worried where you were. Oh, God, don't be thinking about that. It wasn't my fault I was late. It's because of the bus. And, always kind of pushing that away, pushing the responsibility. You won't get the, oh, I'm sorry, I was late. I hear, I see how you feel. Or you probably won't get that. You'll get defensiveness and justification. So there'll be lack of empathy and a lot of justification. Mm-hmm. And then the person who's the empath, the one that's always trying to do the right thing, will then take it upon themselves and go, oh, okay, yeah, sorry, you're right. I shouldn't feel so upset about it. And, oh, yeah, of course, it's not your fault. The bus was late. Whereas actually the truth is, well, they could have said, they could have messaged, they could have had an understanding of how you feel. That would be the win-win. Yeah. They don't always have to make it okay, diminish your feelings and justify their behavior.
Yeah.
And it won't seem that extreme at the beginning. It will say, oh, no, it's not a big deal. I'm overreacting. Maybe there's nothing here. But gradually the person starts to think, oh, okay, actually, I think this is ramping up, but by then, but I love them. And maybe I do need to work harder. And maybe I am too sensitive. And it's kind of, yeah, it's really controlling.
Yeah, it must not be a nice situation to find yourself in. I'm just thinking if I've got any more questions on that, because it's just they're two separate things, aren't they? Gaslighting and being a narcissist. But and would narcissists typically employ gaslighting as a, tool in their toolbox?
I don't know is a short answer. This is going more into the realm, I guess, of a psychologist.
I suppose gaslighting is another one to be, aware of in a relationship, that they're not gaslighting. I
think there's elements of it there. I would say in the relationships I've seen that I've realised or clients have known when they've come have elements of control and abuse.
Yeah.
And there will usually be some indications of sort of gaslighting, i.e., which if those people don't know, it's sort of that person leading to the point where they doubt their own truth, they doubt their own sanity, they start to say, and so I will usually hear something like that. It'll be something like, you're not remembering that right. No, you didn't feel that way. No, I wasn't that late. No, you're remembering that wrong. And they'll start to kind of go, but you were. I remember it was 3:00 and I'd expected you at 1:00. It was 2 hours. It wasn't. It was 20 minutes, and they start to go, oh, well, they're so adamant that they're right. They're so adamant it's 20 minutes. So it must have been 20 minutes. Maybe it wasn't 2 hours. Yeah. And I think it was, categorically they're saying it was 2 hours, and then that person's saying it was 20 minutes. And you're like, what's the truth here? There's something odd. This is not.
Well, who's telling who's?
Yeah, and that's when I'm starting to think that's a bit of a red flag. It's kind of, whoa, if the truth, so we come back to the, your truth, sort of the truth. If you're really battling about what's true, then you're kind of like, there's something weird going on here. What? You're not saying, if that's your truth, I accept that. And if that's happening a lot, then that could be gaslighting. Yeah, because it's like that's not your truth. That isn't what happened. And that person starts to go, okay, maybe you're right. Like, whoa, wait a minute. Do you not? And then they go, I don't think I know my truth. You know, if it goes on for years, you end up going, I don't know my own opinion. I don't know how I feel because I'm told how I feel. I'm told that I should be okay with that. I'm told that everybody else is fine with this. I'm told that I'm unreasonable. I'm told that I'm stupid or psychotic or you know, you're told what you are. And by then it's really, really hard to escape.
Yeah, difficult. I mean, I've had sort of things happen like that. And it's to do, I suppose, with fairness again and truth as well. And I'm a sort of person that's fairly, you know, I know my own mind, and but even those kind of people can be ruled by someone like a narcissist or controlling person. But yeah, I've been in situations where I've had to phone someone and say, "Is this what happened? Is this what's fair? Is that what happened?" Do you know what I mean? I just need to check myself, you know, with someone else. So I definitely have been there. So tricky. I mean, we're coming into the grounds maybe where this is why relationships are so tricky.
Yeah. Different
people's truths and balancing expectations, and oh my gosh, we need another podcast.
I watched a program recently on Love is Blind, and I just finished watching it last night. It's on Netflix, and even as a relationship counselor, I got to the end of that and thought, how would anyone want to be with anyone after watching that program? It just makes it seem, I don't know, I just kind of, my goodness me, the whole thing's complicated. But I thought, it's okay, just you do your best. You know your stuff. You can only do what you can do. It's okay. Yeah, it's a tricky old world.
It's a big thing. Well, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to kind of bring in or talk about or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think it's just come across that I love what I do, you know, and it comes down to really how we feel about ourselves. And if there's I love all those strengths I've talked about, I try and bring them into what I do. So I am creative and empathetic and, you know, here to sort of help anyone in any way I can. So if anyone has anything out there they just wanted to talk through, I'm a great believer there's always a way. You know, if I can't help, there's someone who can. So we just need to keep that self-worth going. We deserve to fill up that balloon. We all deserve to feel that we're okay, you know, and that we're enough. So if anyone doesn't feel like that, then I think it's important to talk to someone and to find out ways to meet some of those needs differently. All the things we've mentioned, you know, just I'm okay, you're okay, bring out the best in ourselves and the best in each other. And that's why I love what I do. And very much in children as well. The sooner we can do that, hopefully the more healthy relationships you have as you get older. So, yes, so I'm here for anyone if they need any help with any of that.
Great. And I would urge people to go and check out your TEDx talk. It's on YouTube. And that covers emotional resilience, and it's quite a fun thing.
Yes, toilet seat therapy. That was if you've only got 5 minutes and you just need to pop to the loo. It's again, I didn't know my sort of natural strength at that point. I hadn't done the strength scope, but I realised looking back, like kind of creative, you know, who put the toilet on the stage, and I just had it in my mind to think. I think it was coming back from when young children, and the only place you can go for 5 minutes is the loo, you know. Yeah. And if the parents-in-law are visiting, or you know, the house is full of people, and you just sort of think, oh my goodness, I just don't know what, you know, kind of encompasses everything we've talked about in a way. It's a process of going through, where am I at? How do I feel? Like, what should I do? What's going on? And it just uses the sink, the mirror, the ceiling, the walls, the floor as a little sort of
reminder.
16 minutes or something, isn't it? Strategy of, all right, now how am I going to walk out the door and face the world again? I've just had a few moments to myself, and right, off we go, best foot forward. So.
It's brilliant. Yeah, go and check that out. She's got a toilet on the stage and talks about in the bathroom. And
yeah, it's on the website if it's hard to find on YouTube, because toilet seat therapy, you get lots of toilets coming up. But
so I ask everyone this: what makes life sublime for you?
Oh, I said, well, I think coming back to what fills up my balloon is how I would put it. And it's definitely part of those jigsaws. So I think my number one would be sort of walking up a hill in the sunshine with my children and husband, and just, now the daffodils are coming out. Like, that's one of my most sublime things, is just feeling fresh air. Maybe we're looking over the sea, or just a view, that's the big one for me. Kind of maybe a flask of tea and a picnic, and it just feels completely sublime. And if we've borrowed someone else's dog, then even better. Got a happy dog, so I think that would be, I just love that. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds lovely. That sounds lovely. So where can people find you and contact you? You briefly mentioned your website. What is your website? That's a good one to give them.
Yeah, staycalmandcontent.com.
Go on, sorry.
Yeah, well, the book is linked from there, and the TED Talk and everything. But yes, the book's on Amazon as well. Stay calm and content, no matter what life throws at you. That would probably be another easy way to find me.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I've really enjoyed our talk, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. Thank you for your insights. It's been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much.